Okay, so for my reflective analysis, compare and contrast humor and cross-cultural paper, I chose to do the 2 videos on the Big Bang Theory and Awkward. So for the first question on the Big Bang Theory, it was, what did you learn about the character's perception of race, sexual orientation, ethnicity, gender, religion, and privilege? So for the Big Bang Theory, I kind of have down that for Penny, how she's a blonde and blondes are considered dumb or not as smart, and how she's also an actress, or she starts her journey in the show as an actress. And as for like Leonard and Sheldon, they're seen as nerds because they're scientists. So Sheldon and Leonard have brilliant minds about how the universe works and science and all the things that make the world go around, but when it comes to women, they have no clue how to handle that, so they don't really fit in. So I guess that's kind of their perception of their own, like they feel like they're privileged because they're so smart and they have their doctorates, degrees, and whatnot, but when it comes to women, they're like at a first grade level. So for the second question, it said, how did you feel about watching or listening to it? So obviously it was more comical because you can see all the stereotypes, or like when which leads into the third question, was the culturally specific humor perpetrate the stereotypes. Of course it was humor because Leonard and Sheldon always make fun of Penny for her not knowing anything about science and how she is the dumb blonde, but it can go vice versa because Penny can make fun of Sheldon and Lennon because they don't know like certain actors. Like one time one of the shows, Penny has like cards for Sheldon to answer about pictures to faces or names to faces, names and faces to shows. Like Leonard and Sheldon actually didn't know who some of the famous actors were in the world, but they could know molecules and what they do and how they're made and kind of different ways that works, but they didn't know certain actors. So I thought it was just kind of humor and comical how they can make fun of each other for the different things, but when they come together, they just make it comical. So for like this fourth question, it said, what did you learn about the minority experience? The one thing I thought of was how Leonard and Sheldon are minorities because they're so smart and not everybody has PhDs like they do. Well, then it made me, there's more shows about Penny and how her exes as a blonde are like the buff, muscular, athletic men versus Sheldon and Leonard, who are the small, skinny, frail men, but they have a lot of brain smarts, but not comical smarts or street smarts, common sense smarts, like some of Penny's exes did. So Leonard was intimidated by buff men coming around because Penny was with the buff men when she was just first moved in, and Leonard was like, oh my, big scary men, but in reality, Leonard had more on them because of his smarts rather than just having big muscles. Isn't really much to go on and forward in life unless you're a bodybuilder. But for the fifth question, it was, how does culturally specific humor related to positive identity develop for individuals who may identify with a specific group? So for them, I said, well, they know how to embrace it. Like Penny, she's an actress and she works at a cheesecake factory, and she's a blonde, so she thinks she's pretty and she can get all these acting jobs and whatnot because she is blonde and she's skinny and she's female. So she kind of embraces it that way. And then for Leonard and Sheldon, they embrace it because they know they're smart. They appreciate their ability to do things that normal, average people don't. So I feel like they embrace it because that's how they identify as. Like, they identify as blonde and pretty, and they identify as scientists that are smart. For the last question on that one, it was, what is the negative impact of culturally specific humor? So for that one, I put that they were seen as weird or out of normal, because like I've said before, that they have brilliant minds, but when it comes to women, they have no clue what to do. So most people are like, oh, I know nothing about molecules and the universe, but I know how to flirt with the girl at the bar. So I thought that was kind of, that they're seen as weird or out of normal. And overall, it's a comical movie that comes all together, even though they have their differences. So, and then for the show Awkward, for the first question I put, what did you learn about the characters' perception of race, sexual orientation, ethnicity, gender, religion, and privilege? I put that they were high school students, obviously, and it was about a show about a girl named Jenna who has trouble with finding her way that she fit in with friends and how she met guys, and of course they explore their sexuality and doing habits of trying to fit in between school, sports, and whatnot, and that how the peer pressure plays in a role. Like one of her friends, T, gives her good, but she also gives her bad advice about things, like when it comes to men, or drugs, or drinking alcohol at parties. Another thing was Jenna's mom was pregnant with her in high school, so her mom was also, through the years, Jenna was also seen as weird because her mom got pregnant in high school with her back in the day. How did I feel watching it? I felt like it was a major stereotype of most of the high schools. Like, not all high schools are the same when it comes to, like, things like cheerleaders. For example, in my school, I had graduated with 31 total students, so we were a bit smaller, and we were all closer together. Like, we were all pretty much one big group rather than different groups of, like, jocks and smarts and band geeks and everything. So, like, for example, the cheerleaders, one of the cheerleaders in the show, she was blonde and dumb, like Penny was in The Big Bang Theory, so that was kind of the same. But they also had a fat cheerleader that was on the show, which it's not normal to see fat cheerleaders, but that was one of the unstereotypes of it. But I think overall it was a stereotype of how most high schools work. But then again, there was the drinking and the partying and the drugs and everything that they all do. For the culturally specific humor, 2 and 3, I kind of felt like overall it was awkward because the things that was happening to Jenna, like she would get caught having sex by her parents, and just made me like, oh, that's awkward. Like, I couldn't imagine that happening. So overall, like, with things like getting caught drinking or being made fun of in the hallways or getting something spilled on her, like, I just felt awkward for her, which is kind of a stereotype for how the show is, because it's titled Awkward, which makes sense because overall high school years are awkward. For number 4, what did you learn about the minority experience? I learned that their minority wasn't the same as my school minority because, like I said, we didn't have certain groups. We had one big group because we were so small. My senior year, my class was the biggest class, K through 12, and we were all in one building, and we had like 31 students who were like the biggest, and it was kind of crazy. So their minority wasn't the same as my school minority. They had like the band geeks, they had cheerleaders, they had the jocks, they had the smarts, and they also had the ones that, didn't do anything. But I felt like in my school, if you were on the basketball team or soccer team, you also were in band. Because in my school, if you weren't in band, you were weird. Because if it wasn't band, you were in art. So if you took art, you were weird, but you had to be in band to be cool. And then things like sports or academics. If you weren't on honor roll in my school, you were known as like weird, because honor roll was pretty common in my school actually. So I just felt like overall the minority experience for them was different because they had the certain groups that didn't get along or kind of meshed together kind of weird. For the fifth question, how does it relate to their identity? I kind of compared it to Big Bang Theory, how they both embraced their weirdness, and like how Jenna didn't do much, but then her boyfriend was a jock. Her best friend was kind of weird, but she did her own thing. She didn't care what other people thought. And then how there's the cheerleaders that try to make fun of them, but there was the dumb blonde and the bigger cheerleader who wasn't skinny. The negative impact of the humor, I put it as negative high school experience can carry to adulthood, which will have trouble finding their happy medium and their place to be. Like if you went to the workplace and you're in an office and you have these people conversing over something that happened last night, but you weren't there because you felt like in high school you didn't go anywhere because you didn't have friends, so you kind of carried that on to the workplace, I guess. So overall, compare and contrast, it highlights kind of the weird kids and then how they're different from the majority, like scientists versus the buffs or the blondes actresses that are dumb, but they were in sports and they worked and whatnot. And contrasting it kind of, obviously in Big Bang Theory, kind of like I said, carrying on to adulthood. Big Bang Theory, they were adults and they knew their place and they were happy with it. But then in Awkward, they're still in high school and they're kind of trying to find their place, I guess. A little bit of how they felt about different things. So overall, they're both seen as comical and humor to people just because they can kind of relate to it, I guess, because everybody's a little weird and everybody's has intelligence and everybody's different things. But these shows are kind of something that's why they're popular shows, just because people can relate to them and they'll watch them and they'll kind of laugh and pinpoint things that have happened that they thought, oh, that makes sense. So overall, the different cultures and ways people were raised makes them into what they are in the future in their adulthood. So that was my take on the two shows. Overall, I liked them both, and they're pretty fun to kind of pick apart different things of why they're different, why they're different from the minority groups, and how people can relate to them. So, thank you.